morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Today I have some very disappointing news to report about Maleficent set for 2014. Now this is a movie I'm really rooting for, largely because of its behind-the-camera talent. Not only am I excited for Linda Woolverton, who wrote Alice in Wonderland and Beauty and the Beast, to return to the silver screen, but also for Paul Dini to make his live-action debut. Plus, I got the chance to interview Robert Stromberg, production designer on Avatar, Oz the Great and Powerful, and Alice in Wonderland, who's making his directorial debut himself just after Comic-Con, and I'll put a link to it at the very end of this video, that interview. And he's a really, really nice, wonderful person, very talented, so I really want to see this film succeed. I mean, it has great talent working on it. So imagine my disappointment when I saw the headline yesterday that not only is it going through reshoots for what's reported to be a weak first half, but it's brought on John Lee Hancock to oversee those reshoots. He's the director of The Rookie with Dennis Quaid, The Alamo, again with Dennis Quaid, The Blind Side, which really put him on the map with Sandra Bullock, of course, and then he's directing the upcoming Saving Mr. Banks, coming out this holiday season with Tom Hanks as Walt Disney. Now, I guess the Disney company really likes what they're seeing because they have tremendous faith in him, and Joe Roth, the producer, who also produced Oz the Great and Powerful, is putting John Lee Hancock, he's not only having him rewrite scenes for the opening of Maleficent, but he's actually has requested and has put him on set with Stromberg to kind of look over his shoulder as like a safety net. Very disappointing on so many levels. First of all, you might just assume, oh, it's a first-time director, it needs work. But apparently the script needs work because, Woolverton and Dini, how could they go wrong? It just seems so bizarre, but apparently they have. And the fact that John Lee Hancock, who, with all due respect, I don't feel is as talented as the individuals that he is doctoring to be brought on, it gives me some pause for concern, even though the film is going through reshoots. I hope they're not messing it up. I understand. I understand this is Stromberg's first gig. I would have liked to have seen him be able to pull all the way through without having to have any crutches. And as I just said, I hope Disney isn't thrusting crutches upon him that really aren't necessary. We'll see what happens. Angelina Jolie, who plays Maleficent, is reported not to be involved in the reshoots because they have to do with the first half of the film. Joe Roth has said the second half looks phenomenal. And Jolie is also busy, of course, prepping Unbroken, her second directing gig about the Olympian held, hostage. So I don't even know if she could come back. But really upsetting news about the movie. I hope it comes out really well on the other end. I'm very excited about this film for numerous reasons, but as I said, largely for the talent behind the camera. So that's the first story of the day. The second story also is a Disney story, and that is that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been picked up for a full season. Now there's some debate in Hollywood as to why that is, because while Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had a huge debut, really impressive, the most impressive actually they reported since 2009's V, which was a show that did very well starting out and then just completely circled the drain and disappeared. S.H.I.E.L.D. seems to be following a similar pattern because the ratings are just really dropping. So because it started very well, but it's had significant drops in week 2 and week 3. So as I said, I predicted the show would hemorrhage viewers. I feel very strongly that it's very cheesy, that it's a disservice to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's too network television. Just basically anything that could be wrong with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is wrong with it. And it's just so disappointing to see that it was greenlit. And I know a number of you are Joss Whedon fans, but you have to admit the basic fact that Joss Whedon is someone who has never had success on television with the mainstream. I mean, he's had success with Buffy, and as many of you pointed out, the spin-off Angel, but those were shows on the WB, which became CW, much lower bar than what you need to succeed on network television or even cable television. So very disappointing, very scary, and of course, and I think that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had to get picked up for the full season. It would have been too embarrassing for it not to have been. You can see the way that Disney dragged its feet in even picking it up. The Blacklist and Sleepy Hollow were picked up for full seasons before Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., despite Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s bigger debut. But again, it's just too embarrassing for the show not to have at least one full season. Will it come back for a second season? I think it depends on how much the ratings drop. I think it would be embarrassing for it not to come back. I suspect it will come back with a major overhaul, perhaps, and hopefully. But I mean, and I hope this kind of is a warning sign to all to both Marvel and DC about making these television shows and expanding their cinematic universes into television. Television and at least network television. I think that's a big distinction. Network television and film are very different mediums. And I really feel that the crossover there, it's just very hard to handle. And I really wish they would consider cable television for these shows, because that's where the quality television is right now. I mean, there are a few exceptions on network TV, but look what's winning all the Emmys. Look what has the big fan bases that everybody, is tuning into and writing about on social media. It's not the network shows. I think the only real network show that enjoys that is Scandal, and that's a totally different audience. So, very disappointing. And I'm wondering if some of you are still, a lot of you said, give Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. time. Well, it's approaching its 4th episode. How's it doing for those of you who stuck with it? I've dropped it. And I'm really, it would take a lot for me. I guess I would check out, because of, these channels and, reviewing them and discussing it with you, I would check out any show that started, but, it does not give me high hopes for Gotham, the Jim Gordon show. And I'm very nervous about the discussion that putting Wonder Woman on television instead of film. The fact that Kevin Tsujihara is like, we need to get Wonder Woman on on film or TV. It's like, no, TV shouldn't even be in the discussion. What are you doing? So I really honestly feel TV is not something that these cinematic universes can expand into, unless they want to just bring down the entire ship. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story of the day, The Maze Runner. There's been rumblings about The Maze Runner. It's another young adult novel turned film. They're hoping it'll follow in the footsteps of Twilight, but also I think more so The Hunger Games, because it's action-oriented. It's about some teenagers caught in a maze. They're the Maze Runners. And Fox feels so good about this, which is directed by Wes Ball. He's a film student who won the Student Academy Award. This is his directorial debut. They've pushed it a little bit. It comes out in September now of 2014. But they're so excited about it, they have optioned and picked up the rights to the sequel, The Scorch Trials. And I would tell you what The Scorch Trials is about, but it's a little bit of a spoiler to The Maze Runner. So just know that they've picked up the sequel and they're working on it. They have Wes Ball attached to supervise. I guess he wants to move on to something else, or doesn't want to commit that much. And also the same writer, his name is T.S. Nolan, and he and Wes Ball actually went to school together. They studied film at Florida State University. So that is not one of the most reputable film schools. I'm just telling it like it is. But I think it's an excellent example of it is the student or the filmmaker, and not so much the place where they got their education, that makes for success. So kudos to that team. They're both doing very well. It's nice to see some new up-and-comers enter the Hollywood fray. But we'll see. As I reported and as we all discussed, Mortal Instruments Sony had greenlit their second film, but had to pull the plug after a very, very, very disappointing box office, which I felt was too bad, because I know a lot of you gave me a lot of, heat over it, but I thought that Mortal Instruments had a lot going for it, and it was a solid film and deserved a sequel. But there might just be too much in the young adult market, or this adaptation market. But we'll see. I think, from what I've heard, The Maze Runner is a little more male-centric, so I'll be interested to see if that makes a difference, because most of these films obviously have focused around female characters. So if anyone here has read The Maze Runner, do you have any faith in it as a film, or the Scorch Trials? Do you think this is the next hot franchise? All right, so time for today's viewer question. It is from Black Masamoon X. Black Masamoon X. Okay. It says, question, do you think video game movie adaptations can become the next cash cow for Hollywood like comic book movies have been? Or, as we just discussed, young adult novels? I liked that question because I thought it was a really interesting gray area, because I feel that video game adaptations are stepping up their game. And I think that, of course, you could say, well, video adaptations were done first and they were done horribly. I think Resident Evil is the only real successful video game adaptation franchise to date, and a lot of Resident Evil fans would argue that the films are still subpar to the games. But, a lot of comic book movies early on were pretty poor. But when they started being taken seriously, thanks to Christopher Nolan in The Dark Knight, he really ushered in this new age. Some of you would argue that it was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, but I feel that while that was successful, it still had a family, colorful, cheerful edge to it, and it didn't have the seriousness, it wasn't taken at the level that the comic book films are taken today, almost like that they're like Godfather, like The Godfather, Scarface. That kind of fan base came into the genre with The Dark Knight. So I argue that The Dark Knight is what started this, and Nolan giving this, a level of credibility that the genre didn't have before. So who knows? It could happen with video game adaptations, and there are some very interesting ones coming up. World of Warcraft with Duncan Jones could be it. It could be the Splinter Cell. It could be Assassin's Creed that Michael Fassbender is rumored to be attached to. All of those films, all those video game adaptations have potential. That said, though, I feel that where you're running into trouble here is that while comic books exist on the page, video games are almost movies in themselves these days. So I think you have a situation, and also, oh, by the way, there's a Mass Effect movie. I'm interviewing the Mass Effect writer today for Newsarama for New York Comic Con, so that just popped into my head. So if you, all weekend, you can check out Newsarama's site for videos, and I will be co-hosting many of them. So anyway, so I feel that a lot of the video games are already movies in and of themselves, and very good ones. So I think you might have situations where the video game companies want to be too much involved for Hollywood's tastes, or maybe they want to make movies themselves. Like I reported yesterday, Rovio Entertainment is making their own Angry Birds movie. Microsoft wanted to make their own Halo movie, and they're getting so sophisticated in these, in the animation, segments of the games that they very well could make a movie. And they're basically making, to some degree, interactive movies right now. So I think that gray area is where this kind of adaptation runs into trouble. So we'll see if Hollywood can adapt and they can work together. Legendary is the company behind Mass Effect and also Warcraft, and I have great faith in Legendary. I think they're the ones behind Nolan's trilogy, and I think that they are very respectful of talent and they could pull it off. So we'll see. What do you guys think? Write your thoughts down below about today's stories and any questions you'd like answered on Monday and any stories you'd like to see covered. So have a great weekend, and for those of you going to New York Comic Con, you can find me at the Bleeding Cool panel tonight at 8 o'clock, or you can find me in the Newsarama Skybox all weekend. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.